قرآن واسق حياتي قرآن.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, today we'll be learning 10 lessons from Juz 24. Let's go to our first lesson.
أليس الله بكاف عبده ويخوفونك بالذين من دونه ومن يضلل الله فما له من هاد.
The first lesson we learn from this juz is a believer only fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the characteristics of a mu'min, of a believer, is that he always fears Allah and nothing else. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, من خاف الله أخاف الله منه كل شيء ومن لم يخف الله أخافه الله من كل شيء. The gist of this hadith is that whoever fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah makes all the things fear him. And whosoever does not fear Allah, Allah will scare him with other things.
وإذا ذكر الله وحده اشمأزت قلوب الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة وإذا ذكر الذين من دونه إذا هم يستبشرون.
The second lesson we get from this juz is happiness on remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remembering Allah all the time and recognizing the happiness that comes with it. A believer always remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every action he does in this world. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam says, من كان القرآن حديثه والمسجد بيته بنى الله له بيتا في الجنة. Which means the person who talks according to Quran, that means he has a Quranic lifestyle, and his house is masjid, that means prays regularly, Allah will make him a house in paradise.
وأنيبوا إلى ربكم وأسلموا له من قبل أن يأتيكم العذاب ثم لا تنصرون.
The third lesson we get from this juz is do not waste time and opportunities. A believer is aware that every moment he spends in this world is precious as it's limited and not reversible. Hence, he uses it constructively in this world so that he is not among the people who regret on the day of judgment for not accomplishing enough good deeds.
وما قدر الله حق قدره والأرض جميعا قبضته يوم القيامة والسماوات مطويات بيمينه سبحانه وتعالى عما يشركون.
The fourth lesson we get from this juz is focus on recognizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A believer strives to perceive Allah so that he can feel His presence in his life. Therefore, a mu'min should try to understand, to recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His attributes, and increase his ma'rifat. If a person becomes strong in usul ad-din, the beliefs and the roots of the religion, he can become much better in furu ad-din and can have a successful life and get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
أولم يسيروا في الأرض فينظروا كيف كان عاقبة الذين كانوا من قبلهم كانوا هم أشد منهم قوة وآثارا في الأرض فأخذهم الله بذنوبهم وما كان لهم من الله من واق.
The fifth lesson we learn from this juz is travel to learn lessons in life. A believer travels with the intention to learn lessons in his life so that he can get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One should make sure that getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the end goal for every action, including traveling. Therefore, we learn that traveling is not always bad. If traveling done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to take the lessons so we can become a better Muslim, that traveling would be very good. Why? Because it will make us get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
يا قوم لكم الملك اليوم ظاهرين في الأرض فمن ينصرنا من بأس الله إن إلهنا قال فرعون ما أريكم إلا ما أرى وما أهديكم إلا سبيل الرشاد.
The sixth lesson we learn from this juz is be compassionate and merciful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attribute is being beneficent and merciful. So believers should try to reflect this attribute in his character by using tender-hearted and kind towards the other fellow believers.
ذلكم بما كنتم تفرحون في الأرض بغير الحق وبما كنتم تمرحون.
The seventh lesson we learn from this juz is do not celebrate in negligence. A believer remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all the situations, either joyful or sorrowful. Allah is warning those who celebrated after committing the sin instead of being sorry for their act, and they did not realize the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On the day of judgment, these people will be told to repay for all their incorrect celebrations after sinning, arrogance and ignorance.
كتاب فصلت آياته قرآنا عربيا لقوم يعلمون.
The eighth lesson we learn from this juz is learn Quran's language to understand its teaching. Here we learn and we see the emphasis on learning the Quranic language, which is Arabic. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, learn the Arabic language because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks to his creation in Arabic. Therefore, we should try to learn Arabic as much as possible to know and to learn the words of the Almighty.
وقال الذين كفروا لا تسمعوا لهذا القرآن والغوا فيه لعلكم تغلبون.
The ninth lesson we learn from this juz is do not get trapped by enemies' evil plots. A believer should be sharp and smart to identify enemies' false propaganda so that he is not trapped, as the enemies will try to keep the believer away from Quranic teachings and the right path.
ولا تستوي الحسنة ولا السيئة ادفع بالتي هي أحسن فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم.
The last lesson we get from this juz is try to attract the maximum towards religion, trying to make people interested towards the right path. A believer understands that he is looked upon as the follower of the right path, so his behavior should reflect that. The verse says, good and evil conduct are not equal. And then it says, repel evil with what is best. Therefore, a mu'min should have the ability that attracts everyone with his good conduct, and he should not return their evil with evil. These were the 10 lessons. Inshallah, we'll come again with the next 10 lessons of the next juz. Till then, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
رحمن يا رحمن